Hi, Studio One viewers. I know my face is new here, so I just wanted to introduce myself before I get into the interview. My name is Michelle, and I'm going to mainly focus on interviewing drum and bass producers. So if you don't know what that genre is, that's okay. On today's episode, I'm interviewing Alpha Rhythm, and we start out by talking exactly what the genre is. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode and feel free to share it with a friend. And be sure to follow Studio One on Instagram and be sure to check out Alpha Rhythm's social medias. Everything will be linked down below. So thank you again and enjoy. Well, thank you again for coming here today and being on the show. My first question is for those who are watching that don't know what drum bass is, how would you best describe the genre?
Yeah, that's a question that living in the United States, I have to ask, or I get asked a lot and I have to answer a lot. Because usually, especially in the US, people use the EDM umbrella, right? So you have electronic dance music, EDM. And then to the casual listener, that's just everything. But drum and bass, to me, and to probably most drum and bass DJs, is so much more. I mean, it has its roots in soul and funk music. And it honestly has its roots in the same kind of music that hip hop does because of the amen break. The break that's used for most of drum and bass is the same drum break that was used to create early hip hop tracks. Back in the day, people were buying records and sampling records and getting drum breaks from the records. And the same drum break that spawned the US hip hop movement spawned the British drum and bass movement. So it is kind of the street music of London. The way we have hip hop in the United States is kind of the way they have drum and bass in London. It has its roots in soul, in funk, especially the kind of drum and bass I do, which is liquid drum and bass, which is the more soulful, deep, melodic musical drum and bass. But it is such a wide variety of kind of musical styles because you have the more aggressive, the more upfront drum and bass that's called neurofunk. You have jump up, and then you have the deeper, more soulful side. And it's aside from the beats per minute, the BPM, which is 170 to like 176 beats per minute. So it's a relatively fast genre of dance music. There isn't a ton in common between neurofunk and liquid drum and bass. They're both called drum and bass, but it's such a wide encompassing genre. So hopefully that answered your question. I mean, it's fast soul music. That's the best way I can describe what I do with liquid drum and bass. But again, there's just so many different styles that barely scratches the surface of drum and bass as a whole.
For sure. That's my favorite part of it, is that there's pretty much anything for whatever mood you're in.
Right.
It's such a varied genre. And then you mentioned the soulfulness. Is that the reason why you decided to make specifically liquid drum bass?
It's funny. I've been DJing for a long time, and I originally played a lot heavier sets, more upfront, like quote unquote dance floor friendly. I mean, I would play the jump up drum and bass that is more popular in the United States. The heavier stuff is more popular, the grimier, that stuff tends to go over better with a US audience. Overseas, when I go to Europe, this kind of liquid style, Hospital Records, Shogun Audio, Spearhead Records, those labels are much bigger overseas. Not so much here in the US. So originally I did play much heavier stuff. It wasn't until I got a little older, I'm in my 30s now, not that that's super old, but then I moved a lot more into liquid, and I started producing. It's been about 2 years, a little less than 2 years that I've been producing. So I haven't been producing that long. So it's just more, I don't know. It's more my speed today. It's more my style. It has more soul, I think, to it. It moves me more so than the other drum and bass kind of serves a purpose. It's dance music, right? I mean, ultimately we have to look at the point of this music is to dance to it. But for me, like liquid drum and bass is so much more than just dance music. Jump up and neurofunk and all these heavier genres, I think they play better in the club, maybe, especially again to American audiences. But like, I listen to drum and bass not always in the club, right? And in fact, in the United States, we don't go to many clubs. I don't know about you, but like, I'm lucky if I make it to the club once a month.
Yeah.
So
More
like, do I
festival.
want to listen to this really loud in your face dance music while I'm in the car? Like, not really. I'd probably get pulled over because I'd go too fast. So, um, yeah, and Hospital Records, Focus Recordings, Spearhead Records, these big record labels in Europe, they all put out this wonderful liquid, and
Mhm.
those are the labels I wanted to be on. And you kind of have to, when I write music, I try to remember like who am I writing for, what label am I writing it for, and I wanted to write for these more liquid labels. So
Makes sense, for sure. And then how did you get the idea to combine video games and video game soundtracks with drum and bass? Because that's such a cool collision of worlds.
and I'm certainly not the first person to do it. There's a whole remix community called OC Remix, and they're part of the reason I kind of got into electronic music. Is I used to listen to video game soundtracks, and I mean I still do. But I grew up playing Nintendo and Super Nintendo, and some of these songs are so iconic and so catchy, and they've been remixed so many times. And with the advent of, you know, today we're all producing on computers, and it's very easy to sample, right? So I can take a song from, say, Zelda, and I can be like, I love this melody, and I can snip it out of that song and I can put it in a drum and bass track. And I mean, I'm certainly not the first artist to do this. Like, there's so many other drum and bass artists, and they just are sampling what they're listening to, what moves them, especially in liquid, what moves them, what stirs their soul, because it is this soulful music. They go to those things, and you just whoop, they say the imitation, is the greatest form of flattery, and really one of the places that's most evident is in music. I've studied a lot of classical music, and John Williams is probably the most iconic composer of the past century. But if you study his music, Star Wars, Jaws, all these things, he just stole those not stole. He lifted those melodies. He didn't sample them, but he took these ideas from famous classical composers that have worked for hundreds of years, and he put them in. And people are like, oh, John Williams, I always say is the most hummable musician like ever. Yeah, I mean, it's Superman, it's Star Wars, it's E.T., it's Jurassic Park, it's Jaws, but he borrowed those things from other people. They say good artists borrow and great artists steal. And I hate to use the word steal, but like that's kind of how it works. And I just love video game music. I think that whether it's Elder Scrolls or Zelda or whatever it is, they do such incredible orchestral work today, and it's such evocative music. And when I'm trying to write my own evocative music, where better to borrow ideas from than from video game music? Because I don't actually listen to a ton of drum and bass anymore, and I think you'll find most producers don't listen too much to their own genre because you need to get ideas from elsewhere. So, and you want to do something that no one else is doing. And within drum and bass, I don't think anyone else is really borrowing ideas from video games. But yeah, I love video games. My whole, if you're watching the video, my whole sleeve, I have my left arm covered in tattoos, and it's all video game stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
I have Sephiroth, I have Enderman, I have a blue turtle shell, I have Samus, I have Tetris blocks, I have Solaire from Dark Souls, I have the Lich King from Warcraft 3, I have 343 Guilty Spark from Halo, and all of these games that I'm mentioning, even Minecraft, I mean, and even Tetris, like everyone knows the Tetris music. Like it's so iconic. So what better place to borrow from than from video games? So
Oh, for sure. I know like Jeremy Soul's like one of the greatest, and then like going into like Lord of the Rings, you got Howard Shore, who's just
correct.
amazing. So definitely some great people to be looking up to for sure.
Yeah, Howard Shore. Oh my God. You know, and that again, this is what I'm listening to in my day-to-day life. Like I will put on, I mean, talk about iconic, like the Hobbiton theme and stuff like that.
Mhm.
It's just like, it's incredible how these songs get in your head and just stay there. Man, yeah, Howard Shore. I had the privilege of seeing him conduct an orchestra live and play like 3 hours of Lord of the Rings music, and that's a memory that'll always stick with me. So yeah, it's just monkey see, monkey do kind of stuff, and like I see these monkeys out there, and I love what they're doing, so I just kind of try to imitate that and even borrow from them, so to speak. So
Definitely. And then do you have a soundtrack that you would like love to incorporate in a song one day that like you haven't?
yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
Some of the early stuff is harder to sample because it is less orchestral, and they used like MIDI instruments, right? They use software instruments. Today they're using orchestras. But like Final Fantasy VII, for my money, is like one of the greatest soundtracks in all of video games. And I actually haven't played the remake, which might be heresy. But Nobuo Uematsu, who did the music for Final Fantasy VII, well, actually 1 through 10, he did not do the music for the remake. So I don't know if I would want to sample that. Maybe that's me being old and curmudgeon, but I love the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack. That would be one that, yeah, if I could like sample One Winged Angel or Arius's theme or Cloud's theme, any of those, Tifa's theme. There's so many good themes that he wrote for Final Fantasy VII. And it's funny because Final Fantasy VIII, I didn't play a ton. 9, I didn't play like at all, but I still listen to those soundtracks. It may be, people might think that's weird, but like, even though I never played those games much at all, I will listen to those soundtracks at work or in the car. So Final Fantasy, I haven't done anything with in that whole series up until 10, up until Nobu stopped doing them. I would love to sample one of those, but there's so many. Oh my God. And some companies are more strict about copyright than other. Nintendo's super, super strict with their stuff. So as much as I'd love to sample a Zelda game, because homage, I'm trying to pay homage to these wonderful games, but the last thing I want to do is get sued by Nintendo. And it is kind of a shame, but I understand protecting your intellectual property, but at the same time, I'm not doing this to make money. No one makes a ton of money off their own music. What you do is you make money in the club. You make money off of gigs, but they do not want you making money off of their hard work, and I get that. So, but Zelda, again, so iconic, so moving. I mean, I have a huge Zelda tattoo on my chest too. So I have a Zelda hat on right now. Actually, the thing on my hat is what is on my chest.
Oh, that's awesome.
The wing crest. Yeah, these video games are such a part of my life, and I'd love to sample them all. Metroid, yeah, Dark Souls, but like you said, Jeremy Soule with the Elder Scrolls, he is probably number one for all video game composers for me. So
the funny thing with Zelda too is I forget who did the music for Zelda, but he actually sampled a lot of sounds from like these really old CDs that he used to buy at like stores for really cheap. And so I saw this in a video, like the Ocarina of Time, a lot of the songs in that game are sampled from like these old CDs that he had picked up at a store. So it's kind of cool. Like if you sample a video game soundtrack that originally used samples from something else, like it's kind of like a domino effect.
And that's how music works, and that's really how all art works. Like you're just building off what your predecessors did. I mean, the fact that we have 12 notes and all these established rules, like someone said, I mean, it all came really, a lot of it came from the church originally, and it's all been just iterated on over and over and over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So again, nothing is wholly original, especially in this day and age. Music, and especially the idea of Western music with 12 notes, has been around for so long. And again, so much of it is thanks to the Catholic Church, really. If you really want to get into the history of it, but over and over again, people are just like, "That's a good idea. I'm going to use that idea," right? So yeah, it's funny because I could get in trouble for sampling someone who sampled someone. But yeah, I think Koji Kondo did the Zelda music originally.
Yeah.
I don't, because he did Mario and he did. I think most of those original Nintendo games, Metroid, as well. So.
And then in terms of like visuals for your album artwork, do you ever think that video games would inspire your album art? Much like Seven Lions, how his album artwork is like, it's very fantastical, very like concept art style.
You know, I've never thought of drawing inspiration from video games. Actually, that's not true. My newest EP, which hasn't been announced yet, is coming on vinyl. And I did seek out a specific artist to do the art for that. And before I came up with the name I have now, I was almost called the Dark Souls EP. And there is a Dark Soul EP already. And I didn't want it to get confused, so I actually changed the name of the EP. And when I changed the name of it, the album art changed completely. So I wanted originally it to be something to do with like a bonfire, and that is a tribute to Dark Souls. Where so yeah, it's funny. So the name of the EP is different now, so I went a totally different direction with artwork. And I couldn't be happier with it. Final production's kind of messed up right now because of COVID. The supply chain has been disrupted, so it won't be out until next year. But I've seen the artwork. Obviously, all the music's written, and I can't wait for that to come. But yeah, it's not. It's not video game related at all. And actually, it's the first EP I've put out without any video game samples. Somehow, all four of the tracks, none of them have a video game sample in them. So, which is kind of a shame because I always tried to at least get one or two in there, but it just didn't work out this time. So.
And then you're in Pittsburgh. So what's the drum bass scene like out there when like there isn't a pandemic going on?
We used to have the nation's longest running drum and bass weekly. It was every Wednesday. It was called Fuzz. It was at the Bloomfield Bridge Tavern. And I mean, it was a weekly, so on a good night, we might get a couple hundred people there. On an average night, maybe 50. But we had people through. We had Spy through. I remember it was the week before he signed a Hospital Records, or before they announced he was signed to Hospital Records. Seba, Clute, Gridlock. We've had so many great artists through there. Once that died, the scene, especially for what I do, the more melodic, deeper side of drum and bass, the scene isn't really there. People want dubstep and trap, and if you're going to play drum and bass, it better be really in your face, loud, screechy, foghorn kind of drum and bass, which is fine, to each their own, but that's not what I do, and it's kind of a shame, or I don't know if a shame is the right word, but like, last time I headlined a gig, I'm not going to compromise my artistic integrity, but there's a line I have to walk, right? Because as a DJ, I'm supposed to cater to the crowd, but also like my music just isn't that loud in your face stuff. And so last time I headlined a gig, some people appreciated it. I think the majority of people did not, and I haven't played a show here since. And it is what it is. I've got some stuff coming up. I'll be going next year to Europe. I was actually just in Europe, in Croatia. And the reason I was in Croatia is I was supposed to be playing Hospitality on the Beach, which is this big Hospital Records festival. And it was canceled, but I still had my flight. So I'm like, well, I'll still go to Croatia, right? And it was wonderful. But it's hard when you go somewhere where your music is appreciated to come back to, and I'm not trying to throw shade at anyone, but to come back here where not as many people are into it. Because drum and bass, there's a scene in the United States, it's just for the really loud, in your face, kind of drum and bass, and that's just not what I'm doing. I'm working with vocalists now. I'm working with these wonderful, wonderful musicians, and we're writing very musical drum and bass, and that's just not what people here in the U.S. are interested in. So, but I love Pittsburgh. I'm a Yinzer. I mean, it is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful city, and maybe someday it'll change. I have a T-shirt that says "Be the Change," right? And sometimes you just have to. I'm not leaving Pittsburgh anytime soon, so we'll see what the future holds.
For sure. And then do you have a favorite place to perform, or like your most memorable experience at an event?
Oh man. So my most memorable experience at an event, I actually didn't play. We had LSB here probably 3 years ago, and if you've ever seen the view from Mount Washington in Pittsburgh, you can see the entire city skyline. It is absolutely gorgeous. And LSB, one of his most famous songs is called The View. And this club, the whole backdrop of the club is Pittsburgh. It's all glass. And you can see the entire city. And both Luke, LSB, and I, we were just like, we had this moment, where the Pittsburgh skyline was behind him, and he was videotaping it, and I remember I was too, because it was just such a memorable moment. That's such an iconic song, and the view of Pittsburgh at night is absolutely just the most beautiful thing ever. It was really something. But I didn't play that. The probably the best show, the most memorable show I ever played was, I remember it was a New Year's Eve rave. I don't know what year. This is probably like 10 years ago at least. And it was when the scene was really thriving in Pittsburgh, and we had, I think it was a 4 or 5 room event in the Greater Pittsburgh Coliseum in Homestead, and I got a call New Year's Eve. I got a call saying, "Hey, we had someone cancel. Can you come play this New Year's rave?" And I was like, "Of course, yeah." And I was still playing vinyl back then. I loaded up my bag, and it was by far the biggest thing I'd ever done to that date. The sound was incredible. The lights were incredible. Everything was just, all the DJs before me were fantastic. All the DJs after me were fantastic. And it was just one of the most memorable nights of my life. So yeah, I'll be going to Europe next year. I'm looking forward to making some new memories, because I can't quite talk about what's coming next. And with COVID, it's all kind of fluid, right? But I have some stuff coming out on some more European labels that I haven't released on yet, some big labels, and I'll be playing on some big club nights next year. Fingers crossed, if everything goes well. So really a lot to look forward to in 2022. I just wish I could talk about it, but not just yet.
Eventually, yeah. And then riding off of that, do you have a dream festival that like you just love to perform at?
Hospitality on the Beach.
Oh yeah. That's
I was
my
supposed to
dream
play there.
festival.
Oh my god. Yeah, I'm so bummed that didn't happen. We spent a week in Teesno, which is where the festival was held, and it was just so beautiful. I really wish we had the festival. But the 2 weeks that I spent in Croatia, because I was going to spend a week there DJing and then a week just relaxing, and it was just 2 weeks relaxing, which was fantastic because this pandemic has been, crazy. And that would have been, I mean, playing on those beaches at a hospital event would have absolutely been a dream come true. The other one would be Sunbase, which is another iconic, very liquid driven drum and bass festival, and that one is also on the beach. I just want to DJ on the beach. Like, the music I play is so uplifting and so wonderfully beautiful, and to be able to play in such a visually awe-inspiring place amongst beautiful, wonderful people and beautiful scenery, I cannot think of anything better. It's just like this perfect amalgamation of sounds and sights and smell. The beach, the smells at the beach. It's just like this. I love the beach. I love the ocean. I love drum and bass. It's it sounds incredible, but I have yet I, I have yet to experience it. So I'm sure one day, maybe even next year, if things go according to plan.
I know Sunbase looks really beautiful. I have family that live in Italy, and I'm like, can I please stay with you and then attend this festival? Because I think it's like a 7-day or 5-day
I think
event, and it looks amazing.
I think it might be a week. Hospitality on the Beach, I think, was 5 days. Maybe it was 7. I can't remember. But yeah, both of those festivals. I mean, Outlook always looks beautiful. Let It Roll, that's a little more of the heavier side of drum and bass, but they have some liquid there too. Oh, one last one, Liquidity Festival.
Yes.
In the Netherlands, because most of what I release is on Focus Recordings too, and Celsius, and they're also based in the Netherlands. And there's a lot of kind of cross-pollination between those labels. I imagine before too long, I'll release something on Liquidity or Galaxy, which is their sister label. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, so maybe someday I'll play at that one as well. And I've never been to I've flown through the Netherlands. I've been in their airports. I've never actually been to the Netherlands. But again, 2022, we're talking about stuff. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
For sure. That's so exciting. And like you said, to combine the beach with drum bass and just be a great travel experience as well.
Oh, yeah. I have to plug Croatia, man. If you could ever go, especially people in the United States, they're like, why are you going to Croatia? And I didn't explain to them the whole thing with the festival and everything, but that country, I've traveled the world. I've been to Asia. We were just in Iceland too, which was another beautiful country, but Croatia, the people, the food, the country itself, just do yourself a favor and go to Croatia before everyone else figures it out. Because once I figure like, someday that's going to be like the biggest tourist destination in the world, because people are going to figure out like this is like the most beautiful country with the most beautiful cities and the most wonderful people, and it's going to be swamped with tourists. But at least right now, when we were there, it was relatively empty. But part of that is because of the pandemic. So.
And then you started your own podcast, which is on Sundays. What inspired you to start your own podcast? What was the process like to create that?
Well, I have a YouTube page, and I always said when I hit 1,000 subscribers, I'll start a podcast. And 1,000's not much, but I was like, maybe some people will tune in. And not many did at first. Maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4. But I kept doing it. I think I just wanted an outlet. Living here, and after Fuzz closed, after the weekly night, drum and bass night closed, I wanted somewhere to just play music. Because I downloaded all this music, and I loved getting on the decks and spinning, but just like, it's very easy to live stream now, right? And I was like, well, what the heck, I'll record the audio too, and I'll put it up on iTunes and all that stuff. Because, there's a process, but it's not too complicated. It's really taken off. I mean, my audio numbers are pretty high. I usually get about maybe 1,000 listeners a week on YouTube. To the video version, audio is between like 5,000 and 10,000 downloads a week. It just built this audience. I mean, we just had episode 172, and I've done it every week. I don't think I've missed a week in 3 years. And when I'm gone, I'm able to get other DJs to fill in for me, which is wonderful. I've gotten to the point where I've made all these friends overseas, and all I do is I just give them the code to YouTube, the stream code, right? And they plug in the stream key and they go. I have all these other wonderful DJs that are very gracious and giving of their time. But it's a win-win because it gives them a platform to promote their music on too. And I get a week off. It's kind of grown into this thing. I don't know. The whole reason that I got into drum and bass specifically was the Hospital Records podcast, is Tony Coleman on Electricity. Again, I guess imitation, right? He inspired me. He changed the course of my life with his ramblings and his weekly podcast. and I kind of just took that idea and ran with it. My YouTube page any day now should be hitting 10,000 subscribers. I shouldn't say any day. By the end of the year, it'll probably hit 10K. We have a ton of people that tune into the live stream, and then hundreds, if not thousands, that watch it afterwards. So this community that sprouted up around it, it's the main reason I keep doing it every week, despite like life's other demands. I'm like, well, I gotta make time for everyone that knows me, it's like Sunday's podcast day, right? Sunday's the day I go through all my promos, because labels send me music now because I have a podcast and they want me to promote their music. So I go through the hundreds of songs that I've been sent and pick out the best ones and show them to the world. So yeah, it's fun.
It's great stuff. I've tuned in to a couple episodes. It's perfect for when I'm like working on homework or anything like on the computer, because like that's what Liquid is like. I've always thought is so perfect for, is like focusing and just kind of getting work done, and you get this beautiful music in the background. For sure.
Yeah. And that's the other side of the Liquid question you were asking earlier. Like, I'm like almost kind of a YouTube DJ at this point. Like, my reach on YouTube is greater than any festival I could ever play. I did a 7-hour mix that has like 250,000 listens, and like, you don't play to 250,000 people at a festival. And I know it's like less direct, but like I reach so many people, millions of people on YouTube. And when you're sitting at home, again, like, I don't know, I don't want to listen to blah, 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 blah. Like, I want to listen to like some nice female vocals, some piano, some strings, just something where I can kind of get in a work mode, a workflow too, whether it's homework, whether it's, working, in the office, whether it's driving down the road. I don't want foghorns. I'd rather have piano. I'd rather have Leo Wood singing to me or whoever, And again, my goal was always Focus Recordings and Hospital Records are my two favorite record labels. And the fact that like less than a month after starting, I was releasing on both those labels. It was just, or less than a year after starting production, rather. I was starting to release on both those labels. Like, I still can't quite comprehend it, but that those are the labels that I represent. Those are the labels that I play the most, and that's that Liquid sound, and people love it. The community that they support me so much, and
it's great for
enough
sure.
Because it's it's incredible. But I'm so disconnected from it. Like, I've never met London Electricity. I've never met Dreaz Marco, who runs Focus Recordings. I've never met all these hundreds or thousands of people that support me. I'm just this dude in my studio in Pittsburgh. But I absolutely love it. So.
And it's funny you mentioned the Hospital Records podcast, because that's how I found your music. Is Tony played one of your songs one day. He was like, this song, it sounds like a place from Lord of the Rings. And I thought, oh, it does. And so then that's how I discovered your music, was through him.
So Tony played that song before I had ever, I think, released anything ever anywhere. So, and that was absolutely incredible to hear that, right? Because I didn't know that was coming, right? Because I listened to the Hospital Records podcast. That's just what I do. I was in the car listening to it, like I always am. And I thought there was like maybe a problem with my stereo or my phone, because my own music started to play. And Tony, he used to do these demo casts, and they still do, but this wasn't even a demo cast. Like, I had sent them this song, but he played it on a normal podcast, and that was the first time they'd ever played a demo on the Hospital Records podcast. And I couldn't even, I still to this day almost can't process what happened on that day, because it was like, what the heck is happening? And so quickly, I signed my first EP within days of that. And then started, Hospital wanted to sign something. I did a track with Willem. We got that song, and since then it's just kind of been this roller coaster. Yeah, wow. What a day. I'll never forget that day.
that actually leads perfectly into the next question. What was it like to collaborate with Willem? And also, has the pandemic at all changed how you collaborate with others?
Well, I do a ton of collabs. In fact, it's funny. My next EP is 3 collabs and 1 individual track. My solo tracks, the title track. Yeah, I mean, probably when I get off here today, I'm working on a few more collaborations right now. It's funny, I call them collabs because that's what British people say. But Willem, I mean, I had an idea, I sent it to him. I just ask people all the time, hey, you want to collab? Hey, you want to collab? Some of them do, some of them don't. That one came together pretty quickly. I had the saxophone, I had the drums, I had most of it done. The main thing that he tweaked the drums a little bit and he did the bass line, and added a couple synths. The song came together pretty quickly though. And he said, we should put this out on vinyl. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. And then he's like, I'll send it over to Hospital. So, yeah. But now, yeah, I have a couple songs with Leah Wood I'm working on. And she's just like my favorite vocalist ever. Track with Sydney, who's close to, she's right up there too. The process of collaborating with these people is just incredible. We get on Zoom usually like this, and we just... whether a vocalist or whether they're another producer, it's just been like a dream come true. And again, it's so surreal because like I've never actually met any of these people. They're all overseas, and I can't wait for the day where we can finally all meet up and hug and dance together. So. Yeah, it is surreal. That's the best word I can use for all of it. I mean, I have a record hanging here that's on Hospital Records, and my music's on it, and my name's on it, and like the mental disconnect because again, I've never met any of these people. I don't know if it has sunk in yet. It is quite surreal. I was talking to Irie, who's in Sri Lanka. And he's releasing on Gold Fat and on Pilot UK, which is run by UKF, and on Focus Recordings. And he's in the same boat. He's in Sri Lanka. He's never met anyone, when we just did a song together and we're on like he's 9.5 hours ahead of me, time zone wise. They have a weird half-hour time zone, but it just, both of us are just like, this is crazy, right? Like these people want to put out our music. All right, that's cool. But, we're just on the other side of the world. There's DJs playing our music in these clubs and these festivals and stuff. And I've never seen it. I've seen videos of people playing my music in the club, but I've never actually heard. I've never even played my own stuff in the club because last time I DJ'd was before I started producing. So it's very, very surreal. And very awesome.
Well, I'm so happy for you because that would be like a dream come true. Such a big Hospital Records fan, and then to have your music out with them, that's like incredible for sure.
Oh yeah, I have a Hospital Records tattoo, and that was my first tattoo ever, and then to be releasing on them all these years later is just dream come true. That's for sure.
Oh, they're great. That's the label that I actually like got introduced to Based Foo. Is like basically their roster, and everybody on there is like amazing. So
oh yeah,
Tony does a great job.
Yes, yeah, and Chris, Tony has kind of stepped down recently from label management, and it is more Dan Gresham Newtone and Chris Goss, who used to be half of London Electricity. London Electricity used to be Tony Coleman and Chris Goss. Now it's just Tony, and Tony just wants to focus on music, and Chris is focusing on label management. And Dan Newtone is the head of A&R, which is artisan repertoire, which basically means like all the songs get vetted by him, like before anything gets released. If I'm understanding the process correctly, currently at Hospital Records, that all goes through Dan Newtone. So.
Oh, cool. And then I know we've kind of touched base on this a little bit already, but in terms of vocalists, is there anyone that you haven't worked with yet that like you would love to work with?
That I haven't worked with yet, because Leah Wood was my dream, and she's the first vocalist I worked with. And that's awesome. Yeah. Willem, again, kind of, he was instrumental in setting that up because they've worked some of her best stuff is with Willem, and with Steve BC. You know, Willem and BC are very close. And then I was like, well, I want to work with Sydney, and then now I'm working with her. Oh boy, what next? I wouldn't mind doing another MC track. You know, I'm thinking female vocalist, but DRS is a legend, and doing a track with DRS would be really cool. So I'll say DRS for male, and if I had to pick one female, then I haven't. That's tough. I don't know if it'd be like Colette Warren or yeah. I mean, there's so many good female vocalists. Boy, yeah, I really have a hard time picking because there's a lot of female vocalists that I'd like to work with. Ruth Royal, Rhea. Boy, there's just so many good female vocalists within drum and bass. Diane Charlemagne would have been number one, but unfortunately she passed away. Elsa Esmeralda, I mean, Just One Second is such an iconic tune. And working with her would be cool too. So there's a lot of female vocalists. But as far as men go, DRS would probably be the top of the list. And actually overall just be the top of the list. Now that Leo Wood and Sydney have been crossed off the list. He's number 3. So
he's awesome. And there's so many, like, you know, Charlotte Haining, Charlie Bricks.
Yes, Charlie. Oh my God. Yeah.
She's great. DRS, he like swept the Drum Bass Arena Awards like for a couple of years. And but you know what? I haven't listened to too many of his songs, and like last year, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna like listen to it, and I realized, oh my gosh, totally get why he's constantly nominated, constantly like winning at least best like either MC or like vocalist. It's so good.
Yeah, he has his own label, Space Cadet, and he works very closely with Luke LSB, and in fact, they did an album together called The Blue Hour, which for my money is like one of the best pieces of drum and bass ever to come out. I love LSB and I love DRS. So yeah, he's number one for me, I'd have to say. But for whatever reason, whenever I hear the word vocalist, I immediately think of a female. But you know, there's a number of male vocalists that are wonderful too. So
definitely. And then not last question. Second last question. Subwoofer Lullaby. That's like one of my favorite songs. Literally, when I listen to it, I feel like I'm in a magical elven forest. It's just so perfectly like ethereal and like ambient. And so, what was your inspiration behind that song?
Oh, that's a tough one to answer. Usually when I write music, I just kind of get in a workflow. I think I wrote that song in a day. And most of my music I do write very, 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 very quickly. I get the ideas down quickly, and then I go back and refine. Yeah, it's a weird song if you know how it's made. The end result and what I started with are two very different things. I took some female vocals that I found on YouTube and stretched them way out. So I would take like one word and stretch it out into several seconds and put a ton of reverb on it. And that's where you get that kind of siren. I almost think of it as like a siren song. You know, it's this like this almost, like you said, elvish kind of thing. But it's just this girl I found on YouTube. I don't remember who or what she was singing. But that's like one word just stretched way out with a ton of reverb on it. And if the reverb wasn't on it, it would sound awful, in fact, because when you stretch a half a second of music into 5 seconds, it sounds really bad, but the reverb turns it into this kind of haunting melody. And then the rest of it kind of came together really quickly. I started with those female vocals. I added the strings. There's a choir I played in there. And then it's just a pretty simple bass line and some drums. It's not that complex of a song, actually. But it did all start with those female vocals. I think the words she is saying if I remember correctly, she's saying you are, and that's stretched out at the beginning at the drop. And then I think later she says you don't know, and again it's just stretched way out. You can't understand it, right? It's not discernible. But I think some of the best drum and bass has these vocals like that you can't quite understand, right? It's like there's vocals in it, but you don't know what they're saying. And I like that because it allows you to kind of imbue it with your own meaning. When you have vocals, when you have words, you know what the song's about, right? It's about heartbreak, or it's about falling in love, or it's about something, whatever, usually about one of those two things. But when you just have the human voice, it's an anchor. It gives you something to identify with. The human voice is the oldest instrument, right? And that's really how this song came about, is I just had these like haunting vocals kind of, but I like that. I like your interpretation of it. It is very, very ethereal, kind of elvish. So yeah,
that's exactly what I thought of. I was like, this makes me think I'm in like Lord of the Rings or like Skyrim or like any game or movie where there's like beautiful elves and like mysterious forests.
And that's the first song I wrote where Marco, who runs Focus Recordings, I had done one Celsius EP. We were working on a second Celsius EP, and that's kind of the Focus sub-label, which honestly I think Celsius is incredible. I'm not trying to knock it by calling it a sub-label, but it's not considered the big label. Focus is the big boy. And he heard that and he said, let's do a Focus EP next. So yeah, I love that song. It'll always have a special place in my heart because it's the first one that Marco considered good enough to hang with the big boys, I guess. Yeah, and it became the title track of my third EP. So
perfect. And then final question, do you have any advice for anybody watching who may have an interest in producing drum bass or just like dance music in general?
Anyone can do it. Stop talking about it and do it. Because I talked about it for a long time. I DJ'd for so long. And I never had the time. That was always my excuse, is I never had the time. COVID provided the perfect opportunity because I got laid off and I had nothing but time. Yeah, carpe diem, seize the day, not to get religious or anything, but there is a saying that says, one door shuts and God opens another door. And I find that to be so true. A lot of times people focus on the problem instead of the solution. And it was like, I always said, if only I had the time, right? And this pandemic happens, right? And I get laid off, and like, there seems to be all these problems happening in my life. But in fact, it was a golden platter, or a silver platter. It was this golden opportunity. It was, hey, you said if you had time, well, here's all the time you could ever want. I wrote 3 EPs. I wrote the Wardenfell EP, I wrote Everfrost EP, and I wrote the Subwoofer Lullaby EP and the track on Hospital Records, all while laid off. So do it. That's my biggest advice. Is just anyone can do it, man. Like I could never have dreamed of being on Hospital Records. Focus, I think, is criminally underrated. I put them side by side with Hospital as being my favorite. Those were my goals, Focus and Hospital, and I met them, and now I get to, they're putting my stuff on vinyl now. Again, I can't quite, it is very surreal. They want me to fly to where? You want me to go there? Okay, sure. Yeah. London. Gotcha. I'll be there. Like, cool. Just do it. The sky's the limit. I guess the other thing is ask for help. And go on YouTube. There's a bajillion YouTube tutorials. Like, anyone can do it. The bar has been set. The bar has been removed. It used to be you needed all these samplers and all this hardware and blah, 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 blah. Now you need like a 5-year-old PC and a copy of Ableton and some samples. If you have a MIDI controller, great. You need a mouse, a keyboard, and a computer. And there's a number of people like Willem that do one-on-one sessions that will teach you music production, and he's the reason. He really is the reason I started producing. I saw him post on Facebook saying, "Hey, I've got room for one more student if anyone wants production lessons." I was like, "Man, that'd be cool." And this is right before COVID. I was like, "That'd be cool." And I'm working with Willem, and I'm doing some stuff, and I don't know if I was really getting anywhere. And then COVID hit, and I got laid off, and I just threw myself into it. But now I'm working again, and I'm still able to do it. So it's all about finding balance between work and music.
And silver linings, I guess, like what you mentioned, having
Right.
some time to like chase your dreams. And I'm so excited for you that like you were saying, oh, it'd be so great to kind of get into this, and then boom, and then X number of months later you have a release on Hospital. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, it's but it's because I asked for help. I didn't have the knowledge or the tools to do it myself, so I was like, hey, I looked to people that were offering guidance, right? And that's really like all that could be said for all of life. Like if you want to do something, like just find someone else who's done it and ask them what they did, because like if you want what someone has, just take the actions that they took to get there. That goes for everything. Like if you want a driver's license, just do what everyone did before you. Like go take the driver's test and blah, 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 go to the DMV, whatever. Like the same goes for music production. Like if I want what Willem has, I do what he does. If I want, it's really, I said monkey see, monkey do, but that's everything, man. Like it's all about taking the necessary actions to get there, not just talking about it and thinking about it, but actually taking concrete actions that point you in that direction, taking the steps necessary to achieve the goal you want. And that could be said just for everything in life. Like if you want what someone has, you just do what they do. Then you're going to get what you're going to get it. I mean, that's it. That's everything. It took me so long to figure that out, but yeah, that's how this whole thing works. So yeah,
that's fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure there's a lot of people that want to try to accomplish these music production goals, and so thank you for sharing your knowledge.
The little bit that I have.
I'm just gonna film the outro. And,
cool.
So thank you again for being here. As you know, huge fan of your music. So this is so wonderful to meet you like virtually and have you on the
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And just to wrap things up, you can share with everyone where they can find your music, your social medias. Keep up.
Oh, sure. YouTube.com/alpharhythm. That's probably the best place if you want to catch my mixes. I have hundreds on there. And then everything else is Alpharhythm DMB. Instagram.com/Alpharhythm DMB. Facebook.com/Alpharhythm DMB. Twitter, although I don't really use that. And I'm also on Patreon, and I do a ton of stuff on Patreon. Thank you so much if you're a patron of mine and you're listening. Patreon.com/Alpharhythm DNB. Yeah, I'm all over the place, so you can find me pretty much everywhere. So just search Alpharhythm, you'll find me.